So, why is it important? Why? I mean, we let's just start there, okay? Why is it important that the people respect that God was working through Moses and through Aaron, as far as the Old Testament goes? Maybe that gave you a hint as to where I'm going with this.
He has put someone in authority to carry out his plan. Otherwise, 3 million people are just in chaos with that even happening. But Moses was picked out of the crowd to be the guy, and God had to show. They couldn't believe everything that they had seen so far, and so he just kept having to show them, and kept having to show them, kept having to show them who's in charge.
Yeah.
Moses never acted like he was anybody.
Yeah.
He always gave the credit to God.
He really did. Yeah. I felt sorry for Moses. So it's God was very particular in going through one person, having speaking to one person, having everything come down through that one person. In the Old Testament, you had the law, and New Testament, you have a little something different. But God speaking through again another person that was here at the time. Daniel, you and I talked last Sunday night in detail about how the Old Testament. Maybe I guess it's okay for me to share just a little bit about it, but it was, he was like, well, I'm glad I found a church where they take the Old Testament and show how it relates to the New Testament, and it's all, it works together, and God worked. So that's what's going on here. It's just that you had the law in the Old Testament, which is that's the Old Testament. That's what was prevalent in the Old Testament was the law, and Moses was he's the one that the law flowed through, and God used him that way. In the New Testament, you have the age of grace, you have the church, and all of that went through Jesus. Now, Jesus being greater than Moses, and Moses would tell you this, Jesus, the Son of God, God himself, actually, and the likeness of God while he was here, and he gives this whole new thing that he doesn't do away with the law. He actually answers the law. He fulfills the law and everything that he did. So God really takes this kind of personal, I guess, so to speak, that when they rebel against God, and it's the same thing over and over. And I'm sitting here thinking and reading through all this and studying this. They rebel. They rebel like tonight that we're going to look at. They rebel. Thousands of them die because they rebel, and they decide that it would have been better for us to stay in Egypt, or it would have been better for us to did something else other than what we're doing. And then they come back to Moses and Aaron, and they accept those guys as the leaders again until there's another rebellion. And they rebel. They say the same things. They say it's been better for us to be back in Egypt. It's nothing but an ongoing. It's like a wheel that goes around and around and around, and you can mark that wheel, and you can see that spot every time it rolls around. And that's exactly what they were doing. They were doing exactly that. And in the case tonight, you've got Korah. Korah was the son of Ishar, the son of Kohath, the son of Levi. So he was a Levite, and Dathan and he was with Dathan and Abiram, the sons of Eliab, and the son of Peleth, sons of Reuben. So they were from the Reuben tribe. It took men, and they rose up before Moses with some of the children of Israel, 250 leaders of the congregation, representatives of the congregation, men of renown. So this was not they were very influential men that they were able to come to and get them to rebel against Moses. So just in looking at this, I just want to I've kind of sectioned this off in 4 different sections. So we'll look at it as far as the resistance. Number 1, the resistance in verse 1 through 3. I read just a little bit of that. And so verse 2 says, they rose up before Moses with some of the children of Israel, 250 leaders of the congregation, representatives of the congregation, men of renown, and they gathered together against Moses and Aaron and said to them, you take too much upon yourselves, for all the congregation is holy, every one of them, and the Lord is among them. Why then do you exalt yourselves above the assembly of the Lord? So what's the problem? What's the problem here? So they're looking at, so let's look at it from their side, this rebellion. So they've gotten together 250 representatives. We would look at it, I mean, they were a nation at this point, so we would look at it as, they got half of Congress over here, and they've pulled these guys, and they don't like the president and the vice president running things, so that's kind of how this would. But it's God's people, and it's a spiritual thing too. So they've come to Moses and they said, we don't like the way you're running things, because the whole congregation is considered children of God. They're chosen people, right? We don't like the way you need to be able to push some of that responsibility over onto us, and we can help you. Now, what's wrong with that?
God had already demonstrated to the Israelites that he used Moses.
How many times had he done that? Multiple times. 100% right. So once we know how God is doing this, see, we do that. I'd say we, probably not anybody in here, but we do that as a people. We look right now, even false religions, even some denominations within the Christian rank will look and they'll see, well, we see that Jesus is, you're using Jesus, but we feel like we're pretty good people too, and we've got another plan. We've got another plan, and we'll be able to help you. We talked about this Sunday night too. Where they live, they were there with a denomination, if you want to call them a denomination. Won't call any names, but they've got their own plan. They're Christians, or say they're Christians, but they also have their own plan, and it's a little bit better than what Crooked Oak's plan is. In their mind, that's what they're thinking. They're wrong. I mean, in my opinion, they're wrong. I think probably most everybody here's opinion wrong. Some good people, some good people that would probably help you do anything under the sun, but they're wrong spiritually. They're wrong theologically. They're wrong. Theologically, they were wrong to be able to do this for the very reason that Stanley said God's already told them he's going through Moses and Aaron. So that's the biggest. But there's this resistance. There's this resistance within the Israelite camp to be able to do things the way they want them. And in their mind, they probably sold this. They probably sold this to the 250 representatives as, I'm going to tell you something. Moses, good guy. Aaron, doing the best he can do. There's 3 million people here. They need some help. Let's go talk to them and get them to be able to use us, because you're men of renown. You're representatives of the nation of Israel. You can help do this. I can help do this.
Can I make a comment?
Sure.
Just a few chapters before this, God was fixing to wipe all of them out, and Moses was intervening.
Yeah. Yeah.
What about your promise? What about this? What about that?
Uh-huh.
God, I mean, even to the point where he was no longer going in front of them, he was going to send his angel down there.
Wow.
They don't even know that, but they could all been history just a short while ago.
Yeah,
There's definitely a difference, like you perceive that these guys are arrogant
mhm.
compared to power hungry, and Moses never seemed arrogant.
Yeah.
He always seemed humble, and even to the point of making God mad by saying, I can't do this, I can't.
Right.
So, I mean, I know that was just an excuse, because he wasn't relying on God, but definitely a difference between these power hungry. That's what
I've got
it comes down
skills.
to. They want to be in charge.
They said, I've got skills.
Yeah.
Give me some power. Give me some authority
They
here.
had no
It seemed
idea.
like they were a little bit jealous.
Jealous.
Yeah. A lot of it was, yeah. Yeah, a lot of it was. So let's move on. Number 2, verse. Yeah.
They couldn't see that part.
Yeah. So let's look at Moses' intercession and reply. We see that in verse 4 through 11. It says, so when Moses heard it, he fell on his face and he spoke to Korah and all his company, saying, tomorrow morning the Lord will show who is his and who is holy, and he'll cause him to come near to him. The one who he chooses, he will cause to come near to him. Do this. Take censers, Korah, and all your company, put fire in them and put incense in them, and before the Lord tomorrow, and it shall be that the man whom the Lord chooses is the Holy One. You take too much upon yourselves, you sons of Levi. Then Moses said to Korah, hear now, you sons of Levi, is it a small thing to you that God of Israel has separated you from the congregation of Israel to bring you near to himself, to do the work of the tabernacle of the Lord, and to stand before the congregation to serve them? And that he has brought to you near to himself and all your brethren, the sons of Levi, with you. And you are seeking the priesthood also? You see, the Levites were the tribe that God used in the tabernacle to be able to serve the children of Israel. That's the tribe that Korah was in. He was a Levite. He was kind of acting, you see, he was he was there to be able to serve, but he wanted to be the man. He wanted to be in charge. And at least if I can't be in charge, I want to be able to have a say so. I want to do that. So that's what he was looking at. You see verse 11. He says, therefore you and all your company are gathered together against the Lord. And what is Aaron that you complain against him? So here you see this intercession. They come to Moses and they have this discussion. So the plan is, if you see it again in verses 4 through 7, they're going to use these censers and they're going to put incense in them. And Moses says, tomorrow we're going to let God choose. God's going to choose who he's going, and he's already done this, like Stanley said, but he's going to choose who his leaders are. That's what they're looking at. So see number 3, the rigidness in verse 12 through 15. You see that they're really not happy about the decision. So let's look at this. Verse 12 says, and Moses sent to call Dathan and Abiram, the sons of Eliab, and they said, we will not come up. Is it a small thing that you have brought us up out of the land of the flowing with milk and honey? Is it a small? You talked us to come out of Egypt. It's you. You're the problem here, Moses. Now, this is after what I preached about this morning. This is after that plague, after those people died, and they've turned back, and Moses says, all right, we're going back to step 1 because y'all didn't understand a lick of what we're doing. So back to step one, back to the Red Sea. Maybe you'll understand now. So, but they said, is it a small thing that you have brought us up out of the land of flowing milk and honey to kill us in the wilderness? That you should keep acting like a prince over us. He's saying, who are you to be dictator? You've done nothing for us except bring us out of the wealth and the prosperity that we had in Egypt, and everything was all great, and you see how he's built this up into something that it's not, because they were in slavery in Egypt in horrible conditions. But that's not what he's saying now. Verse 14. Moreover, you have not brought us into a land of flowing with milk and honey, nor given us an inheritance of fields and vineyards. Will you put out the eyes of these men? We will not come up. So he's thinking, what are you going to do to the people that are coming? We're not going to be part of that. And what's going to happen to them? In verse 15, we see, then Moses was very angry and said to the Lord, do not respect their offering. I have not taken one donkey from them, nor have I hurt one of them. So when Moses goes to God and he's mad at these guys, he has a direct line to God. And it's very telling that what Moses asked God to do, God does it, because he's in tune with God. Even the points to where God wanted to wipe these people out, and Moses begged him not to, and he said, okay, I'm not, but this is what's going to happen. There's going to be a plague, and these guys right here that rebelled against me, they're not going to make it. So that's the rigidness, or that's the way they're, that's their attitude. So we see the ruling. The ruling is down through verse 33. Let's see the ruling, verse 16 through 33. Verse 16 says, Moses said to Korah, tomorrow you and all your company be present before the Lord, you and they and well as well Aaron. Let each take a censer and put incense in it, and each of you bring a censer before the Lord, 250 censers, both you and Aaron, each with his censer. So every man took his censer, put fire in it, laid incense on it, and stood at the door of the tabernacle to meeting with Moses and Aaron. And Korah gathered all the congregation against them at the door of the tabernacle of meeting, and then the glory of the Lord appeared to all the congregation. This is the part that we read this morning. So how many people standing at the door of the tabernacle right now? 252, right? Because you got Moses and Aaron. So there's 252 people standing there. And of course, all of these others are representatives, and then Moses and Aaron. And they've all done the same thing with these censers, and they put incense in them. And now this is, man, it's starting to get pretty rough here. Verse 20. And the Lord spoke to Moses and Aaron, saying, separate yourselves from among the congregation, that I may consume them in a moment. In other words, in a moment means like, just y'all stand back, because it's about to be bad. Verse 22, then they fell on their faces and said, this is what I don't know. It'd be hard to say but Moses is mad. I would have been tempted. I would have been tempted to do this, Brother Gene. I would have been tempted to go. You know what I'm saying? I would have been tempted to do that. I really would. At this point, because they've done nothing but rebel and rebel and rebel and rebel, and they know what's coming. They know what's coming.
Brother Mike, is this not what we're supposed to do?
We are, yeah. But I'm telling you right now, there's some times when I see what's going on in the world, I just want to stand back and go, come quickly, Lord Jesus. You know what I'm saying? But we are to pray. We are to convene on behalf of them. And that's what they did. In verse 22, they fell on their faces and said, "O God, the God of the spirits of all flesh, shall one man sin and you be angry with all the congregation?" See, they know, they're saying that this Korah has done this. So the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, "Speak to the congregation, saying, Get away from the tents of Korah and Dathan and Abiram." y'all, y'all get away. That's the scariest thing in the world to me. If God said, "Y'all get away from Mike Norton's house," don't even go close, because even that winter ryegrass that he put out that's real green right now and these cuts about to be gone. That's what he said. Then Moses, verse 26 says, "Then he spoke to the congregation, saying, Depart now from the tents of these wicked men. Touch nothing of theirs, lest you be consumed in all their sins." So they got away from around the tents of Korah, Dathan, and Abiram, and Dathan and Abiram came out and stood at the door of their tents with their wives, their sons, and their little children. And Moses said, "By this you shall know that the Lord has sent me to do all these works, for I have not done them of my own will." And this goes back to really what Gina was saying. Moses didn't plan any of this, did he? I mean, he didn't plan one bit. And that's what he's saying. Look, he says, we're not following me. That's what Moses said. We're following what God wants us to do. You're the one that keeps messing things up. We keep running around in circles out here in the desert. If these men die naturally like all men, or if they are visited by the common fate of all men, then the Lord has not sent me. But if the Lord creates a new thing, and the earth opens its mouth and swallows them up with all that belongs to them, and they go down alive into the pit, then you will understand that these men have rejected the Lord. Now, Moses has just said what's going to happen to these guys and everything that belongs to them. Verse 31, now it came to pass as he finished speaking all these words, that the ground split apart under them, and the earth opened its mouth and swallowed them up with their households and all the men with Korah, with all their goods. So they and all those with them went down alive into the pit, and the earth closed over them, and they perished from among the assembly. Then all Israel who were around them fled at their cry, for they said, "Lest the earth swallow us up also." And a fire came out from the Lord and consumed the 250 men who were offering incense. Now, some might say this is unfair. Some might say it's unfair. That be you? Or do we understand that God's just serious about being holy? He's serious about what he says. With the Israelites, it was different. It was different. God, just like I mentioned this morning, God's wrath is not upon the church. Now we'll bring our own wrath on us, but it's not God's wrath that's on the church. This was God's wrath. It was different in the Old Testament as far as the way God dealt with people. I'm thankful that we live in a New Testament era, that we live in the age of grace, that it's not like this. But verse 36 says, "Then the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, Tell Eleazar, the son of Aaron, the priest, to pick up the censers out of the blaze, for they are holy, and scatter the fire some distance away, and the censers of these men who sinned against their own souls, let them be made into hammer plates as the covering for the altar, because they presented them before the Lord, and therefore they are holy." So God's not holding against the things of worship. He says they're still holy, and they shall be a sign to the children of Israel. So Eleazar the priest took bronze censers, which if you didn't know, Eleazar he'll be the one to take over for Aaron. He's later on in several chapters, but Eleazar is the one, when Aaron dies, Eleazar fills his spot. But it says, so Eleazar the priest took the bronze censers which those who were burnt up had presented, and they were hammered out as a covering on the altar, to be a memorial to the children of Israel, that no outsider who is not a descendant of Aaron should come near to offer incense before the Lord, that he might not become like Korah and his companions, just as the Lord had said to him through Moses. This was such a big deal. This was such a big deal. Did you know if you go to the book of Jude and read the book of Jude, and it's only one chapter, it's right there before the book of Revelation. Did you know that this story is mentioned, and how God dealt with these people, and how God will deal with how God's wrath is going to come upon the world, and it's going to be just like it was in the days of Korah. That's what that says. And then next thing that happens is the book of Revelation. But anyway, we'll finish this out. Verse 41, on the next day, all the congregation of the children of Israel complained against Moses and Aaron.
The next day.
Y'all picking up on that, right? Yeah. On the next day, you have killed the people of the Lord. You, Moses, you have done it. You have killed the people of the Lord. Now it happened when the congregation had gathered against Moses and Aaron, and they turned toward the tabernacle of meeting, and suddenly the cloud covered it, and the glory of the Lord appeared. Then Moses and Aaron came before the tabernacle of meeting, and the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, get away from among this congregation, that I may consume them in a moment. And they fell on their faces. Again, not once, but now again, twice in the same chapter, that they're falling on their faces before God, asking God not to kill them.
I think God was talking about both times. I think God was talking about killing all of them.
All of them. Right here, it was everybody. Yeah, and there's a couple of times when he says, look, well, so Moses said to Aaron, take a censer and put fire in it from the altar, and put incense on it, and take it quickly to the congregation, and make atonement for them, for wrath has gone out from the Lord. The plague has begun. Then Aaron took it, Moses commanded, and ran into the midst of the assembly. And already the plague had begun among the people. So he put the incense and made an atonement for the people. And he stood between the dead and the living. So the plague was stopped. Now you got to kind of get this. And Aaron was doing all this, and he was standing. And as long as he was standing, and he had made confession, and he had asked for sin to be atoned between this. As he was standing between them, they were dying on one side of him and living on the other side. So this was going on. And said in verse 48, and he stood between the dead and the living, so the plague was stopped. Now those who died in the plague were 14,700, besides those who died in the Korah incident. So it was 14,700 on this little mini uprising. But there was the 250 that died during Korah too. Yeah, and everything really. Verse 50 says, so Aaron returned to Moses at the door of the tabernacle of meeting, for the plague had stopped. At this point, it goes to figure that you're not going to test God, the Israelites. I mean, for me, I'd be standing in line. I'd be like, okay, whatever God says, I'm on board with that. If these guys are it, I'm on board with that. So chapter 17 says, it's really short, so we'll read this. And the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, speak to the children of Israel, and get from them a rod from each father's house, all their leaders according to their father's houses, 12 rods. Write each man's name on his rod, and you shall write Aaron's name on the rod of Levi. So they've got 12 tribes. They're writing their names, the representatives' names on these rods, and on the tribe of Levi, which was Aaron, he and Moses, and he says, write Aaron's name on that rod. For there shall be one rod for each of the father's house, and then you shall place them in the tabernacle of meeting before the testimony. So they're putting them inside the tabernacle, which is also where the Ark of the Covenant is. So, and we're going to look at this maybe next week or week after. We're going to look at maybe what this tabernacle looked like. I've shown a couple of videos, and I think those videos are really good to be able to kind of put a visual as far as what the tabernacle looked like. Basically, it was a tent out in the middle of the desert. It was a tent, and they would build kind of a makeshift wall around that was a boundary outside. So there was a courtyard that was inside it, and on the inside of this courtyard was the tabernacle, and on the inside of the tabernacle was the Ark of the Covenant. And the only person that could go into this was Aaron and Moses. But Aaron, this was Aaron's job was to be able to do this. It says in verse 3, you shall give it to Eleazar the priest, and he may take it outside the camp, and it shall be well, I missed one here. No, I'm not. What in the world am I reading? Let's look at verse 5. It says, and it shall be that the rod of the man whom I choose will blossom. Thus I will rid myself of the complaints of the children of Israel, which they make against you. So Moses spoke to the children of Israel and each of their leaders, and gave them a rod apiece for each leader according to their father's houses, 12 rods, and the rod of Aaron was among the rods. And Moses placed the rods before the Lord in the tabernacle of witness. And now it came to pass on the next day that Moses went into the tabernacle of witness, and behold, the rod of Aaron of the house of Levi had sprouted and put forth buds, and it had produced blossoms and yielded ripe almonds. And then Moses brought out all the rods from before the Lord to the children of Israel, and they looked, and each man took his rod. And the Lord said to Moses, bring Aaron's rod back before the testimony to be kept as a sign against the rebels, that you may put their complaints away from me, lest they die. Thus did Moses, just as the Lord commanded him, so he did. So the children of Israel spoke to Moses, saying, surely we die, we perish, we all perish. Whoever even comes near the tabernacle of the Lord must die, and shall we utterly die. So Moses, or God, was setting up this system, which they should have already known. But what God is telling these people is, look, you are only able to access me through Moses and Aaron. Now, Moses and Aaron having a differing job at this point. Moses was the person that God spoke to. He was the one that God communicated to, and Aaron was that priest that would actually be the first priest to be able to and that's how they would go on and being able to sacrifice, and he would do the sacrificial things, and he wasn't just a figurehead. He had a job. That was what he was to do, huh? Yeah, he really did work hard, and he was responsible for a lot. There was a lot of responsibility on his shoulders. So that is the rod of Aaron. And if you remember, there's what's all in the Ark of the Covenant? We ought to know by now. The manna? Okay. And yeah, the 10 Commandments, the manna, and then now they're going to wind up putting this rod of Aaron inside the ark, and it stays inside the ark. This was a holy, this is where the Ark of the Covenant is. This is God. This is the presence of God. This is where God, where God's Spirit. It wasn't like it is now. God's Spirit is here within us, and this is now the temple. This is now the tabernacle. That's kind of wild too, because I'm kind of a mobile tabernacle. Y'all are mobile tabernacles too. So, but God's presence is within us. And I think it's, preaching to myself here too, but man, it makes you think about being holy, does it not? It makes you think about, listen, God said then that there's one way to me. And it was through that sacrificial system, and it was through Aaron and through Moses. Now, does God say that? Does God say there's one way to me?
It's just the final perfect sacrifice.
It was.
It doesn't have to be done over and over.
Jesus said, no one comes to the Father except through me. It's always been like that. So being able to tie the Old Testament into the New Testament, that's how it works. That's how it's. So we're about to see this whole, you go through this, and you'll have some history in this, and you've seen this happen. You'll have some history. A few 100,000 people die, and then all of a sudden, the next thing that happens is you had all that drama that happened, and then chapter 18, it gives you the duties of the priests and the Levites, and the offerings for support of the priests, and that tithes and tithes for support of the Levites, and the tithe of the Levites, and the law of purification. It gets right back into the law. So you have, it's very interesting. You have this drama that happens, and then you have all the rules and regulations, and all of a sudden you'll have another set of drama. There's more rebellion, and if you go on over, believe it or not, would you believe that this is not the last time that they rebel? It would make sense if these people were dying, if it was a different generation. It's the same ones. It's the same ones. Over and over. Crazy.
At what point was, he told Moses that generation was that like, Moses sure said that sure enough.
Yeah, that was in 13 and 14 that we covered this morning. Yeah, that said that this generation won't see the promised land. Won't see the promised land, except for even Moses. Even Moses rebels against God. I mean, it's a small rebellion. It's one of these things. I always feel sorry for Moses about this, but he hits that rock instead of speaks to it, and Moses doesn't go into the promised land. So, all right, thank y'all for being here and being attentive, and just appreciate your service and what you do. Keep praying for our church. Pray for those that are not here, and pray for these shoe boxes. And we have one more Sunday, so you can bring them Wednesday night. Shoe boxes, bring them Wednesday night. But Sunday will be the last day we'll be able to cover them. So right now we've got 27 boxes, so we need 48 more boxes. So if you have not, please take empty boxes and fill those up, and we'll get to 75. Any questions?
If they ever do find the ark, you think there's still ripe almonds on that drive?
Do I think what?
There's still ripe almonds on that staff?
Mm-hmm.
I bet you still got everything on.
Yeah, but I saw Indiana Jones. They found that ark, in Indiana Jones.
The Revelation, it says arcs up in heaven.
Yeah, It does.
So we'll see it one day.
Hmm. That's why they're not gonna find it. Yeah. But yeah, great point. All right, let's stand. We'll be dismissed. Craig, can you take a step off your